Evan was used to cheap motels. Driving cross-country for work meant staying wherever there was a bed, a lock on the door, and hopefully no bed bugs. But this one already felt wrong before he even parked the car. The place sat on the edge of nowhere, a single row of rooms with a buzzing neon vacancy sign flickering above the office. The paint on the walls peeled like sunburned skin. A lone vending machine near the ice maker hummed loud enough to fill the empty parking lot. Inside the office, the man at the counter barely looked up from his phone. His name tag read Bill in faded letters. "One night," Evan said, sliding his card over. Evan turned slowly toward the real bathroom door. "Room 109, he said flatly. Then, almost like an afterthought, "TV works, but don't mess with the channels too much." Evan gave a small laugh. "Yeah, sure." Bill didn't smile back. The room was at the far end of the hall. Evan's footsteps echoed on the cracked walkway as he passed one door after another, all shut tight, their peeling numbers glowing under dim bulbs. Room 109's door stuck before opening, like it didn't want to be disturbed. Inside smelled like mildew and lemon cleaner. One bed with a sunken mattress, a nightstand with a flickering lamp, a desk shoved under the window where the curtains never fully closed, and bolted to the dresser like a prisoner chained to the wall was an old box TV with a remote the size of a brick. Evan tossed his duffel on the bed, showered off the day's sweat, and collapsed in front of the TV. At first it was the usual late-night junk, a rerun of some sitcom from the 90s, a static-filled weather report for counties he'd never heard of, a preacher yelling about the end times. He flipped lazily, half asleep already, until one channel made him stop. It was black and white, grainy, like security camera footage. The camera was pointed at a room. This room. Evan sat up slowly. The same curtains, same bedspread, same crooked picture over the headboard. It was showing room 109. At first he thought maybe it was some kind of motel security feed, like a safety thing. But then he saw himself on the screen, lying on the bed holding the remote. Except the footage was wrong. It wasn't live. It was a head. He watched, frozen, as the Evan on screen set the remote down, rubbed his eyes, then turned his head toward the bathroom door. In the real room, Evan was still holding the remote. The bathroom door was shut. On the screen, future Evan was staring at it. The door creaked open. Something pale stepped halfway out. Not all the way, just far enough that Evan could see the shape of an arm and fingers curling around the door frame. He flipped the channel fast. Cartoons, static, late-night news. He flipped back. Now the camera feed was zoomed closer. The thing in the bathroom doorway stood completely still, head tilted toward future Evan on the bed. Its face was just out of view. Evan turned slowly toward the real bathroom door. The light under the door flicked on by itself. He grabbed his keys, ready to leave, when the TV changed channels on its own. One click at a time. Back to the security feed. Now the bathroom door was wide open on screen. Future Evan was sitting up in bed, staring toward the camera like he finally saw it watching him. The thing in the doorway had moved closer. Its long fingers gripped the foot of the bed. In the real room, Evan crept toward the bathroom door, heart hammering. It was shut tight. He yanked it open. Empty. Light buzzing overhead. Shower curtain motionless. He turned back toward the TV just as the screen cut to static. Then, frame by frame, the feed returned. Not the bed this time. The closet door. Closed. Shaking slightly, Evan froze. On screen, future Evan stood slowly from the bed and backed toward the door. The closet behind him trembled once, twice, then burst open. Something pale and wrong spilled out in jerky movements, like it wasn't used to walking on legs. The feed went black. In the real room, the closet door creaked open a few inches. Evan bolted. He left everything behind, his duffel, his jacket, even his keys when they slipped from his hand at the front desk. The clerk barely looked up as Evan ran past. "Room 109 again?" he muttered, picking up the phone. No one on the other end answered. Jenna had been driving for nearly 14 hours before she finally gave in and pulled off the interstate. She wasn't supposed to stop this close to midnight. Her plan was to push through, get to her sister's place 2 hours away, crash on the couch, and wake up in a real home with real coffee. But the rain came heavy, drumming against the windshield in thick sheets, the road ahead disappearing between every wiper swipe. When the red vacancy sign flickered through the trees, she didn't think twice. The motel was one of those long, one-story buildings that felt like a leftover piece of some forgotten decade. Peeling paint, buzzing neon, a soda machine humming under a cracked awning. Inside the office, the smell of old carpet and cigarette smoke clung to the air. The man behind the counter barely looked up from his newspaper when Jenna stepped in, dripping wet. "One night," she said, sliding a card across the counter. He ran it, handed over a brass key on a plastic tag that read 214, then finally spoke. "Ice machines at the end of the hall," he said flatly. "Only works at night." The way he said it made Jenna pause. Something about the "only works at night" part stuck in her head as she thanked him and left. Room 214 smelled like bleach and damp carpet. The bedspread was an ugly floral pattern that had probably been there since the early 90s. A single bulb in the lamp flickered when she switched it on. She locked the door, dropped her bag, and headed for the shower. The rain outside beat against the window like knuckles drumming on wood. She was brushing her teeth when she heard it, a faint mechanical cough at the far end of the hall. The ice machine. It rattled once, twice, then went silent. She figured someone else was grabbing ice. But when she stepped into the hallway, it was empty. The buzzing fluorescent lights made everything feel like a hospital corridor at midnight. The ice machine sat at the very end, its metal sides dented, a faded sign above it blinking ice in peeling letters. As Jenna turned to leave, the machine coughed again and spat something into the tray with a clunk. Not ice. Something heavier. She walked over slowly. A single Polaroid photo sat in the bin. She picked it up. The photo was blurry, but she recognized the bedspread instantly. The ugly floral pattern. And in the middle of the bed, it was her. Asleep. Same clothes, same messy ponytail. But she hadn't slept yet. Jenna stared at it for a long time before dropping it back into the bin and walking quickly to her room. She told herself it was a prank. It had to be. Someone down the hall, some creep with an old camera. She double-locked the door and turned on the TV, trying to drown out her thoughts with late-night infomercials. At some point, she dozed off, until the ice machine started again. The coughing, rattling sound echoed through the thin walls like it was inside the building's bones. Then silence. Then a single heavy thunk. Jenna sat up in bed. She stared at the door. Her heart thumped louder than the rain. She told herself she wasn't opening it. Not this time. But curiosity has sharp teeth. At 3:12 a.m., she cracked the door open and peeked down the hallway. A second Polaroid lay on the carpet near the ice machine. She crept toward it, each step echoing too loud. The picture showed her door again, standing open a few inches. And in the gap, a shadow shaped like a person. Jenna spun around. Her door was shut tight, locked. But her skin crawled all the way back to her room. She slammed the lock, dragged the desk chair in front of the handle, and sat on the bed with the lights on. The ice machine coughed again. Metal rattling, then silence. Then a soft dragging sound in the hallway carpet. Closer, slow. Jenna held her breath. Through the peephole, the hall looked empty. But the ice machine wheezed one last time. Something slid down the chute with a dull clatter. She didn't pick it up. She didn't have to. Because she already heard the footsteps. They stopped right outside her door. Matt checked into the motel just after midnight. He was used to late check-ins, used to the routine. A quick nod from the night clerk, a key card, or sometimes an actual key. The sound of his footsteps echoing down a too-quiet hallway. But this motel felt different the moment he pulled in. The parking lot was empty except for a single flickering light pole. The office smelled like dust and something faintly sour, like old coffee left on a burner too long. The clerk barely looked up from his newspaper as Matt slid a credit card across the counter. "Room 117, the man muttered. Then, almost as an afterthought, "Housekeeping comes early. Just hang the tag if you don't want to be disturbed." Matt nodded. He didn't plan on staying long enough to worry about it. The room was small and tired-looking. A single bed pressed against a wall where the wallpaper had bubbled and peeled. A TV bolted to the dresser hummed softly, even before he turned it on. Matt locked the door, tossed his bag in the corner, and collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. Sometime after 3 a.m., he woke to the sound of wheels squeaking outside his door. He sat up slowly. The hallway was silent except for that sound, a faint, rhythmic squeal of metal wheels rolling over carpet. He checked his phone. 3:13 a.m. Too late or too early for housekeeping. He crossed the room quietly, bare feet on thin carpet, and pressed an eye to the peephole. A housekeeping cart sat in the hallway, metal frame, towels stacked neatly on top, a faded plastic bag hanging from the side filled with little hotel soaps and shampoo bottles. But no one pushed it. It just stood there, parked directly in front of his door like it had been waiting for him to notice. As Matt watched, a small square of paper fluttered loose from somewhere on the cart and slid across the hallway carpet, stopping at his door. He opened the door just enough to reach for it. It was a name tag. Plastic, white lettering. It said Matt in bold letters. His name. Matt stood in the open doorway staring at the cart. The towels on top rustled faintly, like something had just moved underneath them. He closed the door slowly, locked it, and shoved the chair under the handle. The next morning, he asked the front desk clerk about it. She looked confused, said housekeeping didn't even start until 8 a.m. They checked the hallway camera footage. At 3:13 a.m., the cart rolled slowly down the hallway on its own. No one pushed it. That night, Matt stayed awake. He turned off the lights but left the blinds cracked, the hallway glow slanting in across the floor. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the squeaking started again. The cart stopped outside his door. Matt held his breath and peeked through the peephole. The towels on top shifted like something was crawling just beneath them. Then came the knock. Soft, 3 times. "Hello?" Matt called through the door. No answer. The knock came again. The handle jiggled once, twice, then stopped. When Matt looked through the peephole again, the cart was gone. The hallway was empty, but the next morning, another name tag waited outside his door. This one had Matt written on it again, but now there was a date printed underneath. Tomorrow's date. By the 3rd night, Matt was too afraid to sleep. Every night at 3:13, the cart returned. Sometimes it left towels on the floor. Sometimes it slid tiny bars of soap under his door. One night, it left an empty key card marked with his room number. He told the front desk again. They stopped answering the phone after midnight. The 4th night, the power went out. The entire building went dark, hallway lights dead, even the exit signs glowing faintly in the dark. That was when Matt heard it again. The squeaking wheels. But faster this time. Coming straight toward his door. The knock was harder now. More urgent. Matt gripped the chair under the handle and held it tight. Through the peephole, the cart stood there. And for the first time, someone leaned into view. The face was wrong. Too pale. Skin stretched thin, eyes bulging like wet glass marbles. The mouth was too wide, corners splitting into a grin that didn't move right. It stared through the peephole at him, perfectly still before the lights flickered back on. The hallway was empty again. No cart. No figure. Just a single name tag on the floor outside his door. This one had his name, and the time, 3:13 a.m. Derek was used to cheap motels. He traveled a lot for work, staying anywhere with a bed, a lock, and a halfway decent shower. But this place was different the moment he pulled in off the highway. The parking lot lights flickered like they hadn't been changed in years. One buzzed constantly, a faint mosquito-like whine cutting through the quiet night air. The office sign glowed vacancy in uneven red letters, half the bulbs dead. Inside, the clerk behind the counter barely looked at him. "One night," Derek said, sliding his card across the counter. The man ran it slowly, eyes dull, like he was half asleep. "Room 122, he muttered, handing Derek the keycard. "Non-smoking. Adjoining door stays locked." The way he said it made Derek glance up, but the man was already bent back over his paperwork, like he hadn't spoken at all. Room 122 smelled faintly of mildew and cleaning solution. The bedspread had a pattern that might have been flowers once but was now just faded stains. The carpet crunched faintly under Derek's shoes as he crossed the room, and on the wall beside the bed was the adjoining door. Thin, off-white paint cracked near the hinges. A heavy chain stretched tight across it, locked in place. Derek stared at it longer than he meant to before shaking his head and tossing his bag on the bed. He lay down and let the noise of the old air conditioner lull him into half-sleep. Sometime after midnight, he woke to a sound. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap, tap, tap. It was faint, but deliberate, coming from the other side of the adjoining door. Derek sat up, blinking in the dark. The air conditioner hummed softly. Rain tapped the window. And then the sound came again. Tap, tap. He cleared his throat. "Hello?" No answer. Just silence pressing in close, thick enough to feel. Then, so faint he almost thought he imagined it, a whisper slid through the crack under the door. "Let me through." The words were dry, brittle, like someone speaking through a mouthful of dust. Derek climbed out of bed slowly. He stared at the door, heart thumping in his ears. The chain rattled once softly like something had touched it. He grabbed his phone and shined the flashlight at the gap under the door. The light didn't seem to reach the floor on the other side. It was just darkness. Too much darkness. He called the front desk. The clerk sighed like he'd been expecting the call. "Room 123's empty," he said. "Nobody checked in tonight." Then he hung up. Derek didn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard faint scratching, like nails dragging slowly across the wood. At 2:57 a.m., the doorknob turned once. Slow, testing the lock. At 3:14 a.m., the chain snapped. The sound was sharp, echoing through the room like a gunshot. The door creaked open on stiff hinges. The room beyond was identical to his. Same bedspread, same curtains, same scuffed dresser. But the air was heavy, damp, smelling like rain-soaked concrete. And the light, it was wrong. Dim. Like sunlight filtered through water. Derek stepped inside slowly. The carpet squished under his shoes, though no water was visible. On the nightstand sat a dusty glass of cloudy water. On the wall above the bed, carved deep into the paint, were words scratched in jagged letters. "It's not a room." The door slammed behind him. Derek spun, grabbing the handle. It didn't move. He yanked hard. Nothing. The phone on the nightstand rang. Loud. Shrill. The sound filled the air like it had been waiting years to be heard again. He lifted the receiver slowly. On the other end, his own voice whispered, "Get out." The curtains stirred, though no wind blew. The bed springs creaked. Derek turned slowly toward it. Something lay under the covers. The shape rose and fell as though it were breathing. The phone clicked dead. The air in the room grew heavier, pressing in close like the walls themselves were shrinking. The thing under the covers sat up. Derek backed toward the adjoining door, heart hammering. He pulled. Pushed. The chain on his side was back in place, locking him in. The figure on the bed tilted its head slowly toward him. Too slowly. Unnaturally. When it finally turned its face toward him, the lights went out. When Derek woke, it was morning. He was back in his own room. The chain across the adjoining door was locked tight, unmoved, like nothing had happened. But when he grabbed his bag to leave, he froze. Carved into the door in fresh, wet scratches were new words. "Thanks for letting me through." Kara had been on the road for nearly 10 hours when she finally spotted the flickering red vacancy sign through the trees. The rain had been chasing her for the last 100 miles, tapping against the windshield in irregular bursts, coating the pavement in a slick shine that made every passing car look like a streak of light in the dark. She pulled into the motel lot just after 11:15 p.m. The place looked old, the kind of roadside stop you book because you have no better options. The paint peeled from the walls in long, curling strips. The lobby lights buzzed faintly overhead. The man behind the counter barely glanced at her when she stepped in, dripping from the rain. "One night," she said, setting her card down. He processed it slowly, the printer behind him groaning out the receipt like it was about to die. When he handed her the key, he finally spoke. "Room 209, second floor." Kara thanked him, but he kept staring like there was more. Finally, he added, "Pool's closed for the season. Gates locked. Don't go near it after dark." His tone made her pause. But he was already looking back down at his paperwork like he hadn't said anything at all. Room 209 overlooked the courtyard where the pool sat in the center like a dark pit. Kara dumped her bag on the bed, peeled off her wet jacket, and crossed to the window. Below, in the weak yellow glow of a single floodlight, the pool lay under a chain-locked gate with a sun-faded pool closed sign swinging lazily in the wind. The water should have been still, but it wasn't. Something moved across the surface, slow ripples widening like someone had just slipped beneath. Kara shut the curtains and told herself it was wind, maybe rain. But the air felt heavier after that. Sometime after midnight, she woke to a sound, a low electrical hum, faint but constant. She pulled the curtains apart an inch and froze. The pool lights were on now, glowing pale green through the rain. The gate stood open. She stared down at the water. The surface shifted, tiny circles spreading outward as though someone walked along the bottom, just out of sight. Near the shallow end, something broke the surface with a faint splash. A small square object bobbed slowly upward, drifting until it hit the concrete lip of the pool. A locker key. Kara told herself to go back to bed. She didn't. The air outside smelled like wet pavement and chlorine. She crept toward the pool, shoes crunching softly on the soaked pavement. The key floated in the shallow end, turning lazily in the glow of the underwater lights. The gate swung shut behind her with a soft clang. She leaned over the water, staring at the key. The surface reflected the second-floor walkway behind her. She saw her own shape leaning forward, and another figure standing directly behind her. She spun. No one there, just the dripping sound of water somewhere in the dark. She backed toward the gate when a door creaked open above her. On the second floor, a man stood in the open doorway of room 217. He was thin, hunched slightly, wearing an old-fashioned swimsuit clinging to his pale skin. Water streamed off him, pooling at his bare feet. "Hey!" Kara called up. He tilted his head slowly, too slowly, then stepped back into the room. The door shut behind him. She ran to the lobby, demanding to know who was in 217. The clerk checked the ledger, scanning line after line before shaking his head. "No one stayed there in weeks," he said softly. Kara didn't sleep after that. Every hour she peeked through the curtains. The pool light stayed on until dawn. buzzing faintly, water rippling even when the wind died. When she checked out in the morning, sunlight turned the cracked pavement gold. She glanced up at the second floor. Room 217's curtains were open now. Someone stood just behind the glass. Water streaked down the inside of the window in long, dripping lines. They didn't move as Kara got into her car. They just watched her leave. Alex hated motels like this. The kind you found just off the highway, lit by a buzzing vacancy sign with half the letters burnt out, paint peeling in long strips, and a front desk clerk who looked like he hadn't slept in days. But after driving for 11 hours straight through a storm that turned the whole interstate into a blur of headlights and rain, he didn't care. He just wanted a bed. One night, that was it. The clerk didn't say much as Alex paid. Room 104, he muttered, sliding the key across the counter. He didn't smile, didn't even look at Alex. Alex almost didn't hear him when he added flatly, "Drip in the ceiling. If it bothers you, maintenance hall's on the far side. Just follow the signs." The way he said it made Alex pause, but the man was already staring back at his paperwork like the conversation was over. Room 104 was small and tired looking. Stiff bedspread, thin curtains that didn't quite close, air conditioner rattling like it was choking on dust. And in the bathroom, the ceiling leaked steadily into the tub below. Plip, plip, plip. The sound filled the room, echoing softly through the thin walls. After nearly an hour of it, Alex gave up on sleep and went back to the front desk. The clerk didn't even look up this time. "Maintenance hall," he said again, sliding a flashlight across the counter. "Left, right, left. Doors marked." Alex frowned. "Don't you have someone for this?" The man didn't answer. The maintenance corridor was nothing like the motel halls. Concrete walls instead of wallpaper, bare bulbs instead of carpeted sconces. The air smelled like dust and cold metal. Somewhere far off, pipes groaned faintly, like the building itself was breathing. And the mirrors, every 30 feet a mirror was mounted on the wall. But not right. They were all hung backwards. The silver backing faced outward, the reflective glass turned toward the wall like the mirrors were hiding something. Alex's flashlight beam bounced across them as he walked. Each one was scratched and dented, the walls around them stained by years of moisture and neglect. Some had deep gouges near the edges, like someone had tried to pry them loose. Finally, he found the service door. It opened into a narrow space behind the guest rooms, a maintenance passage running the length of the building, lined with wiring, vents, and old ductwork. The air was warmer here. Stale, like it hadn't moved in a long time. Through one vent, Alex could see directly into his own room. The view was from behind the bathroom mirror. He froze. Dust lay thick across the floor, undisturbed except for 2 sets of footprints, his own leading from the door to the vent, and another pair, bare feet. Long, narrow footprints that led right up to the back of the bathroom mirror, and stopped there. Alex turned slowly, flashlight shaking slightly in his grip. The hallway behind him stretched long and empty, but it didn't feel empty. The air felt heavy, charged, like someone was standing just out of the beam's reach. On the way back, he passed one mirror that wasn't backward. The glass faced outward, clean enough to catch his reflection dimly. As he moved, something else moved in the reflection, behind him. Too tall, too thin. Head tilted at an unnatural angle like it was studying him. Alex spun, light cutting through the dark. The hallway was empty. Only the faint dripping of water somewhere deep in the building. He didn't run, but he walked fast, flashlight beam jerking across the walls as he retraced his steps. He didn't even notice the wet footprints now following his own. Back in his room, Alex locked the door. "Shut the curtains." Sat on the bed with the flashlight pointed at the bathroom door. The dripping had stopped. At 3:12 a.m., something tapped on the bathroom mirror. Once, twice, 3 times. Alex didn't move. The tapping came again, slower this time, nails dragging faintly across the glass. Then words began to appear, one letter at a time. From the inside, liked the view? The mirror went dark like someone had shut off the light behind it. Alex's phone rang suddenly, loud in the silence. He grabbed it with shaking hands. The front desk number flashed on the screen. He answered. But it wasn't the clerk's voice on the other end. It was his own voice, whispering from the vent behind the mirror. The storm had started just after midnight. Rain battered the parking lot in waves, blowing sideways under the flickering yellow lights, turning the cracked asphalt into rivers of shining black water. Inside the motel lobby, everything felt too still. The air was stale, the vending machine hummed faintly, and the ancient clock above the front desk ticked so softly it seemed afraid to be heard. Behind the counter, the night clerk sat alone, watching the rain through the glass doors. The phone hadn't rung in hours. The register sat empty. The vacancy sign outside glowed a weak red above the howling wind. At 2:17 a.m., the printer in the back office sputtered to life. The clerk frowned. It only printed when someone checked in, but the lobby was empty. No headlights outside. No footsteps on the wet pavement. A single page slid out, ink still glistening. Room 6, check-in 2:22 a.m. The clerk stared at it. He checked the parking lot again. No cars. Rain hammered the glass like 1,000 fists. He called the room out of instinct, the receiver cold against his ear. It rang once before someone picked up. The voice on the other end was his own, whispering. Urgent. Don't open the office door. The clerk froze, heart thudding loud in the empty lobby. Before he could speak, the line went dead. The lobby bell above the front door jingled faintly. The CCTV monitor above the counter flickered, showing the grainy lobby feed. It lagged by a few seconds, but when it caught up, the chair behind the desk wasn't empty anymore. Someone sat there, someone who looked exactly like him. The power flickered once. The CCTV feed cut to static, then came back. The figure in the chair now faced the camera directly. Wide fixed grin. Unblinking eyes. Like it was waiting for him to notice. The printer whirred again. Another page slid out slowly. Room 7, check-in 2:27 a.m. The clerk grabbed his flashlight. Rain slashed against him as he crossed the lot toward the rooms, water running down his neck, soaking through his shirt. Rooms 1 through 5 were empty, beds made, curtains drawn, air stale and undisturbed. Room 6's door was shut tight. A faint, warm light glowed beneath the crack. He knocked. No answer, but he thought he heard breathing. Slow, too close to the door. Room 7's door stood open a few inches, rain blowing in across the carpet. He pushed it open slowly. The room was empty. No luggage, no footprints but his own. The bed was perfectly made, except for the shape beneath the blanket. Something moved under it. He yanked the covers back with shaking hands. Nothing there. The sheets were wet, cold, like someone had just climbed out moments before. The lights across the entire motel flickered violently, then went out. Everything drowned in darkness. The clerk bolted back toward the lobby, flashlight beam jerking across rain-slick pavement. The vacancy sign outside buzzed red through the storm, until the letters began to flicker. One by one they burnt out, leaving only 2 words glowing faintly. The CCTV screen in the lobby glowed faintly, running on backup power. It showed the clerk on the screen, standing exactly where he stood now. Same rain-soaked clothes, same flashlight trembling in one hand, but the version on the screen was smiling, too wide, too still, like a wax figure waiting for him to notice. The printer whirred one final time. The paper slid out slowly, ink bleeding slightly from the damp air. Room 8, check-in 2:34 a.m. His own name was printed underneath. You've just crossed the boundary between reality and the unknown. If you felt the fear tonight, make sure to subscribe before you leave, because on this channel every story is just the beginning. New nightmares arrive every few nights, each one darker than the last. Until then, keep your lights low, your doors locked, and your mind open. You are now part of the FearBound family.